All right, let's see if we are live. Welcome everyone on TikTok. Welcome everyone on Instagram. If everybody could give me a thumbs up, let me know that you can hear me and see me all right. That would be greatly appreciated. Hello, looks like we have a couple people tuning in here on Facebook. Ivy Rivera, Ivy Rivera, Psychic Medium, and YouTube at Ask Ivy. Welcome Anna, new member. Thank you so much for your support. Chicken Mama, good to see you. Okay, and Chicken Mama says that she can hear me and see me all right. So I'm just waiting on that thumbs up from Instagram, TikTok. TikTok I can see moving. We should be okay. Vanessa, good to see you. All right, so I do want to encourage everyone to drop their questions, comments on today's sermon topic: IQ, illness, or evil. How to tell the difference. How do you detect the difference in people or situations where something catastrophic, horrific, unthinkable has occurred? You know, people do these unspeakable acts and we wonder, or we blame, or we think we know why they did it, where it came from. And, you know, we want that justified, rightfully so, but I think we really need to have a better understanding, especially as we see, I mean, I guess you could say that there's an increase in evil in the world. I know it certainly looks that way. As a minority, I was always able to see how much evil there was in the world. This is not news to me. This isn't news to a lot of us. So I think some people are seeing it for the first time, and it seems like it's this unbridled situation that's, you know, like becoming a massive infection internationally. And it's like, a lot of this was kind of already here. You know, it was maybe less acceptable, okay, which does feed the problem. And it was being cleverly hidden in a lot of ways. It was being widely accepted. You know, it was in some cases something everyone was just treating like it was, you know, normal. So there are a lot of reasons that it can seem as though right now, you know, the evil is increasing. And again, those of us, whether you're marginalized or minority, you've probably been well aware of how bad it is, and you may have a different perspective on it. And if you do, I would love to hear in the comments exactly what that is. All right, so we are an interactive church, and that means that I highly encourage you to post your prayer and healing requests. I will be getting to them over the course of the upcoming 2 weeks. So even if you're watching this once it's published, I will still be going back, and I encourage everyone here to pray, manifest, send positive energy over all of the prayer and healing requests that we see in the comments section. And like I said, post your questions on today's topic, because at the end, I do try to get to all of the questions. Bear with me, you guys. I am having allergies, seasonal allergies, and I'm not used to it. So a little slow. Super swollen. My ID doesn't even recognize me anymore. 2 days into allergy season, they were like, who the hell are you? You can't have your phone. You know, you can't have anything. You can't buy anything. I can't, like, I'm red and blotchy and itching and miserable. So bear with me. And I can't swallow sometimes. So I am not able. Oh, I'm also self-producing tonight. Okay. So let's pray. I am unable to take the comments from Instagram and TikTok. So I love and appreciate you guys so much. But if you do have a question for tonight's show, or any type of comment, I would love to see it, but I would need someone to move it over here to one of the Facebook channels or the YouTube channel. You could also just switch, okay? And if you really want to support me, and this goes for everyone, please go onto my YouTube channel at Ask Ivy, hit that subscription button, And anything you post there, I will be able to see here in the feed as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. Welcome, everyone. I am your pastor, Ivy Rivera. I'm a psychic medium, a Taino Arawak, and today's sermon topic is on IQ, illness, or evil, how to detect the differences. So, the first thing I want to talk about here today, bear with me, I am having allergies, seasonal allergies. The first thing I really want to talk about is the misconception around animals and how animals find evil people or people who have the potential to do horrific things, whether it's a mental illness situation, it's a drug addiction, it's, maybe they just aren't very bright. We love to believe that animals will detect it. And that is a massive misconception. I've dealt with humans who are full on possessed. I've dealt with humans who have had attachments, okay, negative, like evil type attachments. I've dealt with people who were extraordinarily dangerous and fully enjoyed torturing other people due to whether it is mental illness and or low IQ, and animals loved them. Animals were all over these people. They had cats even. Okay, because we always say cats are that cats always know. Cats don't know. Cats don't know. They had pets who would surrender to them, pets who were maybe not trusting them, but it certainly looked that way, okay, to an outsider. Pets that were affectionate with them. Where else are they going to get it from? Not only the person who's, toxic, but like the animal. Where else is the animal going to get it from? So we want to remember that animals are not a gauge for whether or not someone can be horrific and do unspeakable things or is possessed or is evil. It's just not. Animals are here to heal. They're here to help human beings, especially, to restore their energy, to tap into higher vibrational energy, to remove disease from them, to help them stabilize, to help them to be better people. This is their job. So an animal doing its job does not mean that animal is failing at being intuitive or having an accurate judge of character or discernment, okay? Like, it's doing its job. And for those of you who are like, nah, I don't believe that. How many times have you fallen for someone who was toxic, or you believed, oh, wow, I thought that was a good person. I don't even care if it's a movie star you never met. You really did. You really like this person. You really believed it. Trust me. Okay, this is not a way to gauge. Also, I just want to say this for everyone. Trust children because they are the real gauge. A friend told me about this experience recently where their grandmother was pushing them to go be an altar boy, and their mom was driving them there and forcing them out of the car to go be an altar boy. And he just knew. He was only like 8 years old, but he just knew. He knew there was evil there. There was something bad was going to happen there at the church with the priests. And maybe he didn't know what, but he knew he shouldn't go. He didn't want to go. And he said he was battling himself because he really wanted to do it. There were fun parts of that job, ringing the bells and some other stuff. And, all the other boys were doing it. Well, within a matter of years, the head priest, who the grandmother loved, and the other priest, who the mother adored and was pushing him to work with, got busted for MOLE, you can finish the words of these young boys. Okay. And thank God he trusted his own gut and ran. He said he would get out of the car. She would think he went in the building and he would run. He would run and hide. How many times have you been through something like that, right? I certainly have. You know, I've chosen to run when my mother said, go and deal with this person or let them give you a ride. And they've later on ended up in the news. Children, no. Animals do not. Okay. Most of the time, animals do not. And there's always exceptions to that. Wild animals may, but domesticated, no. And children will know. So trust the children when they speak. All right, let's get into this. 3 different categories. All right, is it IQ? Is it illness? Or is it evil? How to tell the difference? I broke it down into these 3 categories because over the course of my life, this is how Spirit showed it to me. When people I knew were going to do something bad or were wholly bad in themselves, I was able to detect it. And I never lost sight of that. It gets harder as you get older because we are programmed to overlook it and accept it. And especially as women, tolerate it. Okay. But I always noticed it as a kid and I would track it. And it would always fall into one of these 3 categories. Either they were really dumb, they had some type of illness or maybe a mental illness, and they were battling that. And they weren't always doing toxic things or bad things or had no awareness of themselves, or they were straight up evil. And I went to Catholic school for a while. And so I saw a lot of straight up evil. Evil meaning, and today what we're going to be talking about are attachments and possessions. Okay, so those people, it's a human body, but they're no longer operating. Something is in them, operating through them. So let's break down the different categories here. Mentally ill. So what happens when someone is dealing with mental illness? You know, does it often get confused for evil? Yes, it is something where we can see that people who have, not all mental illness, of course, okay, but those who have a tendency to harm others, what we tend to see with them is that, first of all, they work alone. So yes, there are exceptions, but typically they're not going to have a bunch of other people they do these crimes with. And they tend to have awareness of what they're doing or themselves, the extreme severity of the situation, but that may come and go depending on what type of mental illness we're dealing with. It may come and go. So if they're having an episode, perhaps they don't seem to have that same amount of awareness. But later, when they've come down off of that episode or out of that episode, or they're getting the treatment, they may fully have that awareness. Okay, the same thing with their conscience. It can come and go, or seemingly come and go. Sometimes the urges or panic or paranoia are so overwhelming, they can act upon things, and it doesn't mean that they were necessarily working without a conscience. It can mean that they were self-protecting, that they were triggered. Okay, but often with people dealing with mental illness, again, once they're in a safe place, they have a tremendous amount of empathy, and their conscience is perfectly functioning. So we have to be careful with judgments on people who are struggling with mental illness, especially here in the States where we don't have real treatment. And it's a for-profit system. Be careful judging people who are struggling with mental illness, but also be aware if they do have a tendency toward, violence or unspeakable things, it's probably going to happen again unless they do have treatment and it is continuously working. there's no noticeable paranormal activity with those with mental illness that I've seen outside of schizophrenic episodes or even people with dementia, Alzheimer's. We see this commonly. Those in a coma, okay, totally different things. Those aren't mental illnesses per se, but what we see with certain, let's say, episodes that people are going through, they activate mediumship. Okay, so if you are spending time with someone who is struggling in a schizophrenic episode, for example, they're going to talk to you about all the spirits that they're hearing from or seeing. And to them, it is completely real. It's a concrete situation. And if you are in touch with your mediumistic abilities, you can understand that you see and hear those same spirits, but you don't feel that you're out of control where they're concerned. You feel as though you have the upper hand. You can choose to interact with them or not to interact with them. And so what we see with things like schizophrenic episodes, for example, is that their mediumistic abilities are, off the chain. It's just off the rails. And that does mean, unfortunately, they're not only going to attract spirits that are in the light, they're also going to attract spirits that are negative and low energy. But that goes for any human being, whether you're dealing with a mental illness or not. And that goes for every single medium out there. Any mediums who watch me, you know how this goes. How many years did you spend having to learn discernment? Because unfortunately, we don't just attract high vibrational spirits. We attract low as well. And then you have to modify it. You have to set the boundaries. You have to hold the line to make sure that you're only interacting with the higher vibration. Well, someone with mental illness doesn't understand how to do that. And often the medications that they're put on don't allow them to do that. And or they're not educated on any of this. Okay. So outside of that, we really don't see a ton of paranormal problems going on with those struggling with mental illness. Now, there are always exceptions, of course. This is very, general today. There's a lot of nuance here, of course. Let's move on to category number 2. Those with low IQ. Those with low IQ are a significant problem. They do tend to work with others, unlike those with mental illness. So you will typically find those with low IQ around a bunch of other dumb people who have equal or more hate and desire to cause pain to others. And they work in cult-like systems. So because they really can't achieve healthy, normal relationships, they tend to stick together in hateful systems, right? What are cult systems? Cult systems are based on fear. Okay, it's like groupthink. It's group mentality based on, let's take the Catholic Church, for example. It's based on fear that if you step out of line, you're going to burn in hell for an eternity. Okay, or be ostracized or whatever. You're going to suffer the consequences. So they stick together because they are fear-based. And anything having to do with fear is going to brew hatred. Well, what are you afraid of? Okay, so then they've got the people that they're afraid of, the situations that they're afraid of. And they go and attack, like wild animals who are being threatened, or the pack is being threatened. They're going to go attack those people. So they're not learning anything. The thing with people with low IQ is this: even when they're given the information, they're not smart enough to take it. They're not smart enough to analyze it. They can't handle the dissonance, the cognitive dissonance. They're very basic, almost like zombie-like. Okay, they just are like robots. Like they just go through the motions, and they find other zombies and robots to go through the motions with, and they stay right there. And they do a ton of damage, again, because it's a numbers game. They tend to have poor hygiene, which is not to be mistaken with paranormal odors, which I'm going to get to when we talk about the evil part. Okay, so you're probably noticing poor hygiene, poor spiritual hygiene, and low self-esteem. Right? These things make it less and less possible for them to expand, grow, change, get together with people on higher IQ levels. They often get others to do the dirty work, or they share in the dirty work. They show no remorse until something is done directly to them. So they don't understand remorse. They don't understand empathy. They're not smart enough to be able to think like, this is my experience, but I can imagine what someone else's experience might be. And so I'm going to show empathy toward that person. Nope, none of that. None of that. Literally what has to happen for someone with this kind of low IQ is that horrible thing has to happen directly to them or to someone they love. Once it hits home, you will typically see a little bit of a rolling back with someone like this. Maybe even some remorse or remorseful words, possibly a slight change in behavior, or an actual change in behavior where they're not being as harmful and awful to others, but it doesn't tend to last. And unfortunately, even in that one area where they got hit hard, right? They were dishing it out, but they couldn't take it when it happened to them. Even if in that area we are seeing some change, they tend to amp up the hatred, the negativity, and the toxicity in other areas. So they're not smart enough to like connect the dots. Like, you don't think if this bad thing happened and that felt bad, maybe this would too? Nope. They just don't get it. Okay. There's a real cowardice with these people and an infantile nature, a desire to be the victim or be the martyr, be taken care of, or like daddy president, it's like have a parental figures, other adults or leaders or people that are cult member, like leaders, take care of them. Even if it's never happening, they have that desire to be subservient to that. We do not typically see any type of change with these people with age. So when you're dealing with someone with like mental illness, for example, what I've noticed is that once they're done with the episode, they've come down, they're getting better treatment, maybe they get some kind of medication that's working, they go through, so they get some kind of help that they need, we will see improvements there. You don't see that with people low IQ like this. Okay, people with low IQ who love toxicity are typically with age going to get worse. The more people they meet or are around, they're going to become dumber, like just less intelligent. It does not assist. So we don't expect to see much improvement there. As far as the paranormal activity with them goes, you often see attachments and possessions with these people. Because in order for an attachment to latch on to someone, which could eventually turn into a possession, in order for that to happen, the person has to constantly feed it. They have to constantly make bad choices. They have to constantly choose low vibrational energy in their life. And they have to get to a point. If you ever look at some of the people who are obsessed with the paranormal field, right? I'm like, yes, I have a haunted house, but like, it's not the same. I assure you. If you've ever paid attention to some of them, not always the brightest bulbs. And they tend to have attachments. This goes for readers too, who are in dark arts, even if they don't want to admit it. They constantly have attachments. You know, maybe they get some help and that attachment is gone, but then within a year and a half, they have another attachment. Well, we never know when one of those attachments is going to turn into a full-on possession, which is a whole different ballgame. Okay, nearly impossible to get rid of. But again, with people with low IQ, they don't tend to pick up on what the universe is laying down as far as cleaning that up, being higher vibrational. And so it's not at all uncommon to see multiple attachments and possession with these people. So what does that look like? When we talk about, and there's a full training on this called Hauntings, Clearings, and Detachments up on my website. But when we talk about attachments, it's a negative entity that latches on to a human being who has been deliberately feeding negative energy, hatred, paranoia, right? Wanting to do harm to others, all of that. And this attachment slowly latches on to the person because law of attraction, right? The human's negative toxic energy is so low, and this entity is in alignment with that, they can. Anything you're in alignment with, you can manifest. You want to manifest $1 million? Get in alignment with what $1 million feels like. You want to manifest an attachment and a possession? Be hateful. It's bad for the skin. Okay? Bad for attachments. So this attachment latches on and then slowly deteriorates the person's life, health, mental state, energy level through things like pushing them down the stairs, hiding their stuff and making them kind of go nuts, disrupting their sleep with night terrors, making them think horrible thoughts. That's called clairaudience. They put horrible thoughts in their head. So they're becoming more isolated and paranoid and doing more damage to others, doing more damage to themselves. It goes on and on, okay? Some people have attachments their entire lives. It never necessarily becomes a possession, but you can tell when someone is no longer themselves. So I would love to hear in the comment section, when have you dealt with someone where you realized they had an attachment? They will normally hear negative voices in their head. Okay, they have no peaceful, restful sleep. When, though, it becomes a possession, and possessions don't mess around. Those aren't lower entities. Those are evil entities. An evil entity is looking to take over the entire body. And once the attachment has already been in place for maybe months or years, it's not hard for the possession to take over. But again, spirit isn't stupid. Spirit isn't just going to like gangbusters, like come to the forefront, take over the body. It's not going to happen that way. The possession is going to be inside the person, and it will come to the forefront and run the body, and then it will go into the background, and the human will reappear running the body. And then it will come to the forefront, and then it will go to the background until eventually it comes to the forefront and it stays. So we're not going to get into today how to fix that and everything. That's a whole different sermon topic. Again, you can check out that class, and if you know of someone who's dealing with this or you are dealing with this, book a paranormal consultation with me. I've been working with this in exorcisms and whatnot for years and years. Okay. But the bottom line is this. We cannot forget that that person invited it. They didn't just invite it once. They invited it every day with their hatred, okay? Their inability to grow, to think, all right? They chose it. They may have even befriended it. they may talk about these spirits that are their friends, that like either protect them or talk with them or have their back, or so they think, right? Or they think they can use that negative spirit, even though they know it's bad, as like power. They're power hungry. They're egomaniacs, right? They've probably talked about this out loud. And you've been like, whoa, that's the last beer for you, Fred, you know? And then it's real. It's taken over Fred. So someone who has a possession, this thing takes over the body and will go out and do horrific things. The only point of a possession ever is to take over the individual's body to go out and do horrific things to other people or to the environment, okay, to situations and systems that are thriving, that are good for the collective, that are higher vibrational. That's the purpose. And this I have been talking about since probably 2016, 2017, that we are seeing a massive increase, and we will continue to, on not necessarily evil, but possessions and attachments. And it's in alignment with the Hopi prophecy, where in the end times, during revolution, which we're in now, those who have deliberately chosen over and over to feed negativity and hatred and evil, they will fall off and go dark. And that's where we are right now. So hopefully it kind of all balances out. It's also contagious, so be careful. These people have a lot of blackouts. They'll have big time warps, big lapses of time where they don't remember where they were. They don't remember things they said. They don't remember things they did. And you may think they're lying about that, but it's entirely possible they don't, because when a possession does take over the body, there's no recollection by the human in that body, right, of what happened. So it is possible, and it is scary. Aside from low IQ and the love of hatred, people who are battling with drug and alcohol abuse issues and violence are highly prone to having this happen. So we do want to be mindful. All right. Let's move on to category number 3. I do want to stop real quick. If you guys have not already done so, please give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment of any kind. It helps me out in the algorithm. I would love to hear where you're tuning in from. And if you really want to support me, go to my YouTube channel at Ask Ivy and hit the subscribe button. If you want to become a member, hit the join button. It'll show you the 3 different tiers of membership options. Please do post your prayer and healing requests now, and post your questions and comments now. I am going to be getting to all of your questions at the end, okay? But remember, I can only see them if you're here on one of my Facebook channels or my YouTube. I cannot see on Instagram or TikTok unless somebody moves them over here for me. And I will be going back and praying and manifesting, sending healing energy over everyone's requests for the upcoming 2 weeks. Okay, so if you are watching this on replay, I will be checking. Donations are appreciated, but certainly not required. Okay, let's talk about category number 3. What happens when someone is actually evil? Or people will ask, is that really even a person? It is a person. It is a human body. It isn't like an alien form or some kind of robot or some, you know what I mean, zombie with a mask on. It is a person. It was a person, but again, it is no longer operating as a human being. The evil is operating through it. And if the evil wants to operate for a long extended period of time, it's not going to do a tremendous amount of damage to the body. so that it can do more harm for longer periods of time, right? So it's careful. Again, spirit of any kind, okay? But we like to think of evil entities as being like dumb. They're not dumb. They're just not creative. So they're well acquainted with the human body, human nature, how people will fall for their charm, right? What people desperately want, need. They're incredibly intuitive with all of that, but they're not very creative. You can see patterns in evil behavior. I mean, just look at history. Look at things like genoci, okay? Look at things like war. Look at things like, just look around. There are patterns here. There is no reason we can't outsmart, except we have the IQ category, the low IQ category of people, and untreated mental health issues, which is a gold mine for evil, right? We have no real excuse not to outsmart evil activity. It's not rocket science. But what happens when an evil entity has taken over a body is typically a trauma occurred, again, unless it was invited, like we already discussed. The number one group to end up with a possession are those who were assaulted, sex assaulted, especially as children, but at any point. After that, we have groups who, like the Puerto Ricans, I am one, I have seen phenomenal things. Groups of people who came from indigenous roots, who were highly spiritual, but were colonized and then were forced into systems, cult-like systems like the Catholic Church. Okay, so that's a second most typical group, because they are so paranoid about anything in the spiritual world that doesn't come directly from the priest or the authority, right? It means you're going to burn in hell. You are a demon. You're toying with darkness. I can't believe when fellow Puerto Ricans talk to me that way about what I'm doing. I'm like, these are your roots. You have no clue of your roots. Are you that colonized? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It is a massive problem, right? And I want to say the entire Latino community, it's a massive problem. And this shows up in possessions. So we've got category number one, people who were sex assaulted. Number two, let's say the Latino population, due to their dedication to the church as a cult and the paranoia that brings and the evil possession it invites, okay? And then you've got the other categories that I already mentioned. People caught up in a lot of violence, military, just a lot of violence, and then drug and alcohol abuse. So these are the big ones. Not to say there aren't more. And again, you can check out my class, Hauntings, Clearings, and Detachments, on my website if you want to learn more, or book a paranormal consult with me. But ultimately, okay, these people are not looking like aliens or robots or zombies or anything like that, even though they are evil, even though they are possessed. They look normal because evil entities are not stupid. They want to maintain the health of that human host to get more evil done in the world. So how do you know if someone is doing unspeakable things and they are actually evil? Well, evil takes pleasure in what they do. Okay. Often when we see this in children who, again, were assaulted, ended up with a possession, we would say that child was born evil. No, they weren't. Somebody did something to that kid. Something happened to that kid. And it's not uncommon to see a possession come from that. And again, for anyone who has this going on, I don't want you to think we can't reverse these things. The exorcisms exist, right? It's just complicated. So a child doesn't know to ask for that. And what ends up happening is that it can look like you have a little kid or, you know, someone who is like laughing about torturing other people. You know, they revel in their hatred. They fully enjoy the damage they're doing to others. Here's another way you know it's evil. The pain they're inflicting is the goal. Now, the rational, empathetic human mind will say, well, why would they do that? Well, there has to be another reason. No, there doesn't. No, there isn't. It isn't. It is because the pain that they can cause someone else gets them high. That is the goal. They tend to work alone. So those with possessions, you know, they're not going to have a bunch of friends. They're not going to have like people like low IQ, like the dum-dums, like they, you know, they tend to actually have quite a lot of friends. That's not going to happen with possessions. They're going to be loners. A lot of that is strategy. Okay, so again, because evil entities are not stupid, right? They're not going to ruin the body. They're not going to ruin the host. And they're not going to ruin the host by getting it locked up in jail or, you know, working with other people who could botch whatever it is that they're doing and get them caught. You know, they're not going to require a ton of help from other people to do rat work. You know, they don't need a whole pack of rats to do rat work, dirty work, because it is intelligent enough to know how to trap other people, how to pick their victims wisely, how to destroy systems from the inside, using the weak, manipulating everyone like chess pieces, pawns, right? It's smart enough to know how to do that. It doesn't need company. So every now and again, you'll see something evil use like somebody else maybe to kind of do their dirty work. I'm thinking of True Blood. So have you ever seen True Blood? The episode where that woman with the dark hair, she came back and she was like waiting on God to come. She was like evil and, you know, tried to kill the bar owner and had everyone going through these like orgies and drum circles and trances and stuff like this. But she used certain people. She almost like through hypnosis, she was using people to go out and do some of her dirty work. Not the really important things, but the lesser things. That was pretty accurate. They did a lot of research on that show. That was a great show. It's basically that. Okay. So what does this mean ultimately? Well, they won't stop is what that means. So even if they were caught, they were imprisoned, and something like that is going to lead probably to an immediate SUIC. I mean, they're going to end it. They're not going to stick around. If they can't accomplish what they came here to do, you know, they're going to find a way to get out of the body. Which, you know, who knows? Maybe that'll be good for the human that's still there. We talk a lot about walk-ins, you know, in situations like this, but I don't have time to get into all that today. So you guys, let me know if you want a part 2 on any of this and what parts in particular. Post your questions now. I'm going to get to them. There is always a stench that comes along with someone who's dealing with a possession. It may seem like it's hygiene or something rotting or like a dead animal or something sour, or you can't really put your finger on it, but you're going to notice it's not that. Also, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person has horrible hygiene. Like we talked about this with people with low IQ, right? They can have horrible hygiene, but that's not what we're talking about here. So sometimes you're dealing with someone with a possession and they're super clean. I mean, they may even have like OCD, you know, but there is a stench, and this smell would follow them. It would be in their bedroom, especially. It would be on anything they keep around a lot, like a backpack. So if they were to like leave their backpack in another room and you were like, the smell is in this backpack. It's not in the backpack. It is the backpack. It's them, right? It's radiating off of the body. So some people say it smells like sulfur. It can change. It's not always just like one thing. The Conjuring, they brought that up quite a bit in The Conjuring, you know, which is all based on a true story. I interviewed the oldest daughter a couple times on my radio show. So that may be something you want to watch to get a little more in touch with what it looks like, what it smells like, what are the signs when you're dealing with someone who has a possession. Yeah. Okay. Often we see this with serial killers on death row, and the minute they can get at a guard or they can hurt, you know, an inmate or whatever, I mean, they're doing it. They're creepy. They do attract paranormal activity. So when you have someone with a possession or even an attachment, like attracts like, law of attraction is always there, where they're attracting paranormal activity. So, you know, you would see things like pipes bursting, you know, the toilet overflowing, the faucet constantly leaking, you know, water coming up out of the floor, like just a lot of water damage, like it will not stop. And often they have beautiful eyes, or they may have almost like angelic skin. You know, they can be very charming and they can actually look very beautiful. But there is a creep factor. Sometimes you look in the eyes and it's like dead, almost like black. You know, there's no one home. It's like you're looking right through them, or they're looking right through you. And you realize there is no human being in there. All right. So it just really depends on what they're trying to pull off, what they're trying to do. Do they need to be social? Do they need to be charming to pull this off? Because they may be. All right. So it's, again, mostly when we're talking about mental illness, we're talking about these people. Again, typically, there's a lot of nuance here, but typically, okay, what I have seen is that they do have a conscience. They do have a lot of empathy. They may feel terrible about things that they've done or have a desire to do. And when being treated, they may not show any signs of wanting to do harm to other people. And sometimes it's coming from a place of protection or feeling triggered or attacked. All right. And then again, when we're dealing with low IQ, they do work in groups, cult-like mentality, mostly all of this stemming from hatred. They never learn unless something is done directly to them to cause pain. And then even after that, they tend to just continue to cause pain in other areas. Or if they correct, it tends to not be long-term. They do attract paranormal problems. And when we're talking about evil, again, it is enjoying what it's doing. It will never stop. And it is looking for its next victim to go from host to host to take over the body. But is it a human body? Yes, it is a human body. And there may even be a human in there still. Okay. Somewhere. Good luck getting to the steering wheel, though. All right. So I got to pretty much everything I wanted to talk about here on this today. let's get into your questions and comments. Whatever I am able to pull up, I'm going to do my absolute best. Let's see. Ashley says, hi, Ivy. It's been a while. How are you? Yes, I can see and hear you. Bethany Renner, Murray D. Okay, perfect. Good to see you guys. And Pinkness says, hi. I think it's crazy how certain esoteric teachers push that evil doesn't exist. Because they say there's no objective right or wrong. You make a good point that if you're a minority, you know it does. Well, a lot of the spiritual gurus out there, they are middle upper class white people. They have just appropriated everything. They haven't walked the walk, you know. And I'm not saying you can't be white and go through stuff, but when you're saying ridiculous stuff like that, I know you've had it cush. Okay, I know you've never been through anything. There's no way any reasonably intelligent human being, okay, who's come to Earth and has seen difficulty or had difficulty, there's no way they don't understand. Now, they can deny it, but they don't understand that evil exists and that hatred exists and that it is something bigger than us in the human form. There is something bigger going on with that, and we need to learn about it. There are also plenty of people who, in denying it, stay in their positions of power. Think about that. That's why I talked about in the beginning of tonight's sermon. It benefits them. So whenever someone says there's no darkness, you know, in people, there's no evil, how are they getting paid off of that system? You know, how does it benefit them? And I would check there first. Look at that skin tone. Look at, you know what I mean? There's an agenda there. There always is. And that in itself really makes you question whether you should be going there for your healings and your readings. Great point. Thank you, Pink. McKenna says, I didn't realize we weren't doing questions tonight. I'm here. I'm new. I'm sorry. We'll deal with that later. I don't know. My producers will deal with that. Happy Sunday. Good to see you, Kathy. Kimberly Petku says children are authentic. Yes. So children, we all had it. We all still have that in us, you know, but children come to Earth with raw intuition, psychic, mediumistic, and empathic. They come to Earth connected to the spirit world. And then it is society that slowly pulls that away, beats it down, blocks it, walls it out, and telling children that they can't talk about their imaginary friends, or they can't talk about spirit because they're going to look mentally ill in school and they won't have any friends, shaming them with the church and saying that's demonic or evil, don't talk that way, making them feel like there's something bad about it. It doesn't take much when you're getting it from teachers, you're getting it from parents, you're getting it from doctors, you're getting it from church. When you're getting it, all this from adults, right? And other kids even, you know, it causes blocks in the intuition. But children still know, even if they're not comfortable always with their intuition, even if every adult is against them, they have instincts, especially when it comes to their survival. Like the story I told about the boy who ran away from being an altar server, and those priests ended up in prison, right? Like his mom pushed it, his grandma pushed it, everybody pushed it. He ran. And he's okay today because of it. You know, they know, kids know. And too many parents or, you know, teachers, whatever, adults in general, you know, they try to force kids to act differently. When a child doesn't want to be touched, they don't want to be at a social event, they don't want to engage with something, you know, you may want to question why that is. Edgar Villardes says, do people with psychosis such as hallucinations or paranoia can they be controlled by their psychic mediumistic abilities? Well, psychic ability, no, but it can lead to a lot of paranoia. When I talk about like the Chihuahua syndrome, right? Like psychics tend to be very nervous, quite paranoid, because we can sense when a change is coming or when energy is getting closer or when something big is going to happen. The untrained psychic may not know what it is, but the physical reaction can be dysregulated nervous system, paranoia, anxiety attacks, things like that. Chihuahua syndrome, like you're just very, you know. So there's that. But as far as them being controlled through, you know, because they have psychosis through mediumship, that's a little bit different, because mediumship is, in its most raw form, a trance state. Okay. So a spirit is coming in and sort of channeling through you. It is a form of possession, but it isn't literal possession in the way that I'm talking about it here. Okay. That could be somebody's grandpa trying to come in and channel a message through you. So, you know, people who are dealing with psychosis, they can see an increase in trance mediumship. I train my students, not that there's anything wrong with trance mediumship. If you're in my master's class, we talk about it. We deal with it. We're ready for it. But I train my students in mental mediumship, which means you keep the spirit outside of you and you communicate with it. So some people in psychosis are doing that, right? Schizophrenic episode, they're talking with the spirits. They're not letting them all the way in, but some do. And so it is a form of possession, but not like the evil type necessarily that I was talking about. Great question, Edgar. Pinkness says, I usually smell attachments. Is how I know there's one. A possession I can see in the mouth and the eyes. Okay, so yes, you can smell an attachment. That makes sense. Or a possession. Yep. And then you could see it in the mouth and the eyes. Yeah, like a weird smirking, dead eyes, or like I said, very beautiful eyes, almost glowing, almost hypnotizing. Depends on who it is. She said, I also see or hear the symbol, a blanket stare, like an empty gaze. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, it's creepy. I mean, just even talking about it. And I had to reschedule this. So for those of you who were following me and you were ready for this a couple weeks ago, paranormal activity got so bad for me, I actually had to reschedule, because I'm smart enough to know when a simple fix like that will get me back on here. But I don't know. I don't know if this will record tonight. And, you know, just even thinking about these things and talking about these things revs up the activity. And you can feel it. The hair back of your neck standing up, burning sensation at the back of your neck, going up into your head, stabbing in your ears, stabbing in your chest, twisting in the guts, paranormal attacks. Okay, let's see if we have any other. Oh, Pinkness says, I'm in Texas, the Bible Belt of possession and attachment. Yeah. I'm from Savannah originally. The South has problems. Problems. All right, California. Okay. I think playing a huge role here. Okay, I'm probably going to run out of time. Okay, yeah, I've got a bunch of other questions and comments here, but I'm probably going to run out of time to get to all of these. I do just want to touch real quick before I wrap up and remind everyone that if you need a paranormal consultation, you can book that with me. So Ashley says, I'm wondering if Nicole influence is playing a huge role here. Does this duo do their behavior to others? So she's referring here to a couple that do damage, okay, to other people. And like I said, when we talked about the IQ section, low IQ, that's where you're going to see the most pairings. And yes, it is not at all uncommon to see it happen in marriages, coupling. Look at the Look, the files we're all waiting to see. That was a couple, you know, so to see like, yeah, like a married couple or a duo, it's one of the most common ways for people to get evil activity out there is to keep your circle small but effective, you know, and then it really validates the other person's horrific behavior because they're doing horrific things, but the victims, you know, may not either be believed because this other person is giving them an alibi or, you know, making them look or seem normal. Okay, there's a lot there. My alarm is going off. Hold on. Sorry, guys, I have clients here in a minute. Okay, so again, if you would like a part 2 on this, let me know. I hope this was helpful. I will be checking your questions, comments, prayer, and healing requests for the next 2 weeks in the feed. And I will see you guys back here for another Roots Revival church service next month, where we believe in the 3 truths in the universe. That is intuitive intelligence, astrology, and numerology. If you have a sermon topic request, please drop that in the comment sections, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks.